Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Remember, we are live streaming now on the WLAE-TV YouTube page. That's each and every Thursday at 1 o'clock as we go live here at the Ponte Stream Production Studios. You can also catch us on YouTube as well. Today, as always, we'll cover all the home teams. The Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans, UNO. We'll touch on some college basketball, football. Also, again, as always, I have a great guest for you. Ricardo LeCompte of Channel 4 Sports, WLAE-TV, is with us today. Ricardo, welcome back to the show. Good to have you, my friend. And
Eric, it's been a while. Yeah, I'm glad to be
it's
back.
been a while. And I'm sorry about the weather. Huh?
That's my fault. I brought that in here. That's all. That's totally on me. But
so we were just talking about. We've done this show since 2012. This is the first time we've ever had a monsoon. But nevertheless, I'm glad you were able to make it on a very, very rainy day. First of all, further congratulations on the newborn.
Thank you very much.
Okay, brand new baby. It's got to be very, very exciting for you and
very
and your
exciting.
family.
Some restless nights.
Yes.
Some lack of sleep, but all worth it.
Yeah, believe me, I
Yeah.
know. And of course, also tell us a little bit about what's going on over at Channel 4.
Well, we had just wrapped up our football season, so we were kind of immersed in that. But yeah, currently we're cranking right along. We've got obviously, if you watch 4th Down 4, one of our popular shows on Sunday nights. A lot of good features there. A lot of breakdown currently of what's going on kind of in the Saints off season.
Yes.
And we're kind of diving into that, as well as looking ahead to the possible retirement of Drew Brees. We're kind of getting ready for that announcement, which should be coming probably after Fat Tuesday.
Yes.
So we're kind of gathering all the stuff to kind of present what his legacy, his career is, if he happens to walk away and call it a career after 20 years. But yeah, it's pretty much that's kind of what's consuming our time is Saints off season and a lot of good feature stories.
No doubt. Now look, my wife's going to kill me if I don't put us out for the audience. The baby, how old? A name? Give us the rundown.
5 months.
Right.
His name is Trey.
Okay.
But we call him Trey because he's actually Ricardo LeCompte III. I'm a junior.
Yes.
So he's the third.
Okay.
So yeah, Trey, 5 months, very active, very lively, great personality already.
Yes.
And he is actually, I haven't had much experience with babies, hanging out with him, but he is cool. He is a chill baby
Lucky
until he wants something.
Yes.
Then it's like, all right, it is all hands on deck, like get me what I want, but after that, I'm cool.
Enjoy every minute.
I will.
No doubt about it. All right, let's start with the Saints. Something that I think we all anticipated was the restructuring of Drew Brees' contract. That happened toward last week. It became official this week. He reduced his 2021 salary to $1.75 million, freeing up about $24 million of cap space. That will be amortized over 2 seasons, $11.15 million this season, in $11.5 million in 2022. This is the beginning of, again, the detachment between the Saints and Drew Brees, but also the beginning of Mickey Loomis making room under the cap to be able to try to hold on to the majority of this roster. First of all, before we get into that, your thoughts on Brees, the retirement?
Well, I think it is an expected thing. It just seems like after that loss to Tampa Bay, and the way he just kind of handled himself after that game,
Yes.
the way he was kind of talking in the post game afterwards, it seemed like he was accepting the finality of this illustrious career that he's had. I do expect him to call it a career and retire very soon. And if you look at the legacy of Drew Brees, I know that he's put up all these great numbers. He's going to be a legend in this city for the Saints franchise. Nationally, I think they'll look at it as, here was a guy who put up all these great numbers, broke all these records, won a Super Bowl at least.
Right.
But I think he ends up falling into that category where if you're not Tom Brady, you're kind of in that second tier,
Yes.
And that's not a bad thing in that second tier, because I think Tom Brady is going to be, revered as the best quarterback that's ever played.
Right.
But Drew Brees is right in that same, category. You can throw him in the Peyton Manning category just because, he does have all these great career records. He did win a championship, was able to lead this franchise. And what I think will get kind of undersold or overlooked when we look at the career of what he was able to do, when he came to New Orleans and he made that choice, when his time ended up in San Diego and the Chargers wanted to move on. And there were so much questions about, would he be able to play after having that shoulder surgery? Do we want to take that chance? And remember, we're in free agency. Do you choose the Dolphins? Do you choose the Saints? And Saban ends up going with Dante Culpepper. Sean Payton ends up going with Drew Brees and turning around the fortunes of this franchise. I think that narrative needs to be told a little bit more in terms of what he's been able to do with this franchise. And I think everyone in the city and anyone who's close to the Saints organization will remember what Brees did and why that's why he's going to be revered. Nationally, I think they'll just look at the numbers, they'll look at the championships, but really won't focus on the impact with what he did in New Orleans. And I think that's where his biggest impact was what he did for this organization.
To your point, is it a legacy of underachievement, the fact that they only won 1 Super Bowl with a guy who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer?
You could look at it that way. I think certainly most people would think, all right, the Saints should have won maybe a couple more titles.
At the very least one more.
Yeah, and especially you look at this 4-year run, ever since that 2017 draft class, and the talent they've accumulated and the talent they brought into free agency the last 4 years, certainly you think, hey, they should have gotten at least one. I don't know if I want to use the word underachieve, but I certainly think there were a lot of missed opportunities. And I look back at 2018. I think that was the best chance that the Saints had, the number 1 seed. And, I think that team could have beaten the Patriots in that Super Bowl. Unfortunately, yes, I know we got to bring back and Harbinger back to the no call in that 4th quarter. But I think that missed opportunity there, that was probably their best chance of winning it all. But certainly they could have won more, but I don't think overall, when you look at what Drew Brees and his impact and what he was able to do on the field would, cloud that. Certainly he could have won more, but I still won't hold that against him.
Well, definitely, I don't think we will here locally.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when you look at it nationally, especially, again, look, you win 2 championships, you move into that next tier.
Yes.
Okay, 1 championship, you're kind of bunched in with a lot of different guys. Even though, again, the records will set him apart.
Yeah.
In terms of, again, the records that he broke, the records that he set. Some may never be broken. Because of his longevity. That'll be interesting to see again how. But again, here he'll be revered. He's the guy that turned the franchise around.
Yeah, and still 1 championship, 1 Super Bowl championship in a team sport is still great because there's a lot of quarterbacks that don't have one. Dan Marino, Jim Kelly. There's a lot of great Hall of Fame quarterbacks that can't say I had a championship. It's crazy because when you're talking about a team sport, that's what's going to define you. The team is what gets you the championship. So when you separate about that, and it's the same thing with championships or win-loss records for quarterbacks. You can't really use that as a metric because it's a team sport, and it's dependent on 52 other guys to get you there. But what he was able to do and everything else, I think that one championship in the team sport does set you apart because, again, there are a lot of quarterbacks that did not even win one that put up the same numbers.
Fair point. The salary cap, let's get to that because, again, we talked a lot about this on the radio, of course, on this show. I'm sure you've talked a lot about it on your shows. Salary cap because of COVID-19 expected to be around $176 million. Now we're hearing the NFL and the NFLPA is getting together. They want to take these COVID-19 losses, maybe spread them over a couple seasons, going to a 17th game next year. And then, of course, what they anticipate with the new TV deal, an increase in again, revenue. So, again, they don't want to take that hit this year. So this cap that looked to be, again, maybe almost unable to be able to overcome because of Brees and again, what you need to be able to do in terms of re-signing players, now could be a situation where it maybe won't be as bad as first thought. But my thought all along has been, and I'd like to get your take on this, that Loomis has had a plan, and that Loomis and Payton are not going back to 7 and 9 seasons, and that we'll see them. I think we'll see the majority of the core of this team back. Again, with reworking of contracts, opening up a cap room to be able to hold on to the players they truly want to keep.
Yeah, I think that line of thinking, what you say, Eric, I think it's correct. And when Mickey Loomis talked to us after the season, and this is while they were in the Senior Bowl in Mobile that following week, the question was asked, like, is this the year with just basically what you're facing in terms of your cap number, losing Drew Brees, is this a rebuilding season? And not once through that whole interview did Mickey Loomis say this was going to be a rebuild. He fully expects to contend for a Super Bowl next year. And when you hear that, you go, okay, well, you're going to be nearly $100 million over the cap. You're not going to have a Hall of Fame quarterback back. You still got to figure out that position. How can you say that? But as we've seen the last 4 or 5 years, or even, with Mickey Loomis has a formula to always get this team in contention in free agency and at a cap number that's suitable to work with every year, because it's not even he manipulates them. He just knows what to do in terms of restructuring contracts. And the sense you got from Mickey Loomis in that presser during the Senior Bowl was that there was no panic that, hey, like, man, this is, he said the words, it's going to be daunting, it could be an issue. But there was never really a sense of panic because, as you say, he does have a plan. Right. And he knew right off the bat that he was going to be able to restructure Drew Brees' contract. I know everybody talks about the dead money and basically kicking the can down the road with Drew Brees because one day you're going to have to pay the piper and end up doing that. He knows that. Like, it's not like this is new to him going, oh, man, we've got $36 million dead money that we've got to pay over the next 2 years. You knew that they were going to restructure that deal. And you knew that a lot of the guys, and we're going to see more restructuring of deals down the road before even free agency starts. You're going to see a lot of these guys convert all this base salary into bonuses and take that. That's a popular thing that a lot of these GMs, a lot of these
GMs dummy years to the contract.
Yes, exactly. There's ways to get around this. So by the time we get into free agency, they're going to be able to sign these guys and keep a core of this.
I agree.
Now there are going to be salary cap casualties.
Absolutely.
But I think, like, some of the big names that we're talking about. All right, Trey Hendrickson, Marcus Williams, Jared Cook. Some guy, like out of those, don't be surprised if 2 of those 3 guys are back next year because they figure out a way to keep them. If you had to pick between, and an interesting question that we brought up is, all right, if you have to choose between 2 guys on defense, Marcus Williams and Trey Hendrickson, who's the guy you're going to keep in that fold? Well, before all this restructuring happened, and the way that they were playing, there was no way you could afford both. The way Mickey Loomis is setting this up, there's a possibility that 1, maybe even 2 can be there. And the fact is that the Saints can even contend with other teams that are going to be offering Trey Hendrickson that money because most teams need an elite pass rusher. The safety market outside of Marcus Williams, man, you're going to have to pay some money if you want to get someone out there. And I think the Saints can, fork over the money in order to keep him. What looked like a daunting, as he said, a very daunting issue and a problem with the salary cap is not going to be one by the time free agency starts.
I 100% agree. I've felt it all along because the history tells you this. The history tells you when he is negotiating a contract with a player, it is in mind of, again, what are we going to do? Not just this year, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, when I have to sign this player or that player, can I move this money? Can I move that money? And again, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. I'm saying they've already got the plan in place, where they're going to go for the money and where they're going to go in terms of restructuring, who they may ultimately, again, either re-sign, extend, whatever it's going to be. I think those plans are already in place.
Yeah, I mean, the plan is, as you say, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and you're not going to see like a fire sale. It's not going to be like the Miami Marlins, we're just dumping all this salary because we can't get under the cap. No, there's a structure and there's a reason why like all of this will work out, where you can sign these big contracts on when we hear the big numbers in the years, but there's ways around that he knows what he's doing.
You get the fine print and say, again, it's really a 3-year deal, but again, there's look at Andres Pete. Andres Pete's contract is really a 3-year deal.
It is.
Okay, all right. So look, and that's what I keep. That's the number one, and I know you get it as well. The number one question we have: how are the Saints going to keep their core together? Believe me, they will keep this core together.
Absolutely.
They already have it together. Now let's talk about the big question, and that's the quarterback position. You rarely see Peyton come out and throw bouquets at a player that's a free agent. He did it with Jameis Winston on the morning shows through the Super Bowl. He's already talked about Taysom Hill. He's got him under contract. Do you anticipate it being a Hill versus Winston battle for number one, or them going outside of the organization and bringing in a quarterback?
I'll go with what face value, what Sean Payton says, and kind of what Mickey Loomis has said as well, that they like the quarterback room right now. So I think and the reason why he's throwing flowers over to Jameis Winston is because he knows he's a unrestricted free agent, and if you lose him to another team, then you've got issues because I don't think Taysom Hill is ready to assume the franchise quarterback, and he's simply just not ready for that yet. Now,
plus you lose him as the jack of all trades, right?
Yes, exactly, because I think that's where he fits better when you can put him and line him up in different stuff. And it gives defenses a bunch of things to think about when you have to account for where Taysom Hill's lining up versus just having him at quarterback. And you kind of know what he's doing. Like having him as a jack of all trades is a perfect part of that offense.
He's a great weapon.
Now, will he develop into a Steve Young one day?
Right.
Maybe. But right now, I don't think they're there. If they lose Jameis Winston in free agency, then you've got a big hole at quarterback. So Sean Payton is doing the recruiting the same way when he had to go out and get Teddy Bridgewater, where, hey, the agent is vacationing where I'm at. Let me go, kind of make that connection there and try to bring him back. There's a reason why he's throwing that out there right now. I think the Saints know eternally that I don't think they know that they don't feel like the quarterback to replace Drew Brees, the franchise quarterback, is necessarily on the roster currently. I could see them look out, and there are options, to kind of do that. Now, will they be in the running for one of my popular things, and one of the things I would do if I was an organization, I would do everything to try to get Deshaun Watson.
Okay.
And I think that's your franchise quarterback for any organization. Right. That's the guy. That's the next guy.
If you had to give up 2 drafts, maybe 3, would you do it? Now, when I say drafts, I mean first and second round picks.
You know what? If you can keep the core around, and we can see that most for generally what Mickey Loomis can do with this core of the Saints roster, if you can keep that intact, and you can get a quarterback that can win for those 3-4 years, absolutely do it. Why? Go ahead and mortgage the future, as you say, but if you've got the quarterback in there that can lead you to a championship, trust me, I will take 2 championships over going, we've sold our future for 5-6 years. We don't have a first-round pick. That's great, but guess what? We're having a parade while everyone's getting ready to go to the Senior Bowl, looking for what those first-round picks are doing because, we're celebrating and we're winning.
Well, to your point, again, this team is playoff ready.
Yeah.
It is again a franchise quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender again. And if you are in that position, you're going to draft at the end of the draft, which is your first round pick is a glorified second round pick. Your second round pick is a glorified third round pick. So to your point, that works. If you have to give up one of your players as well, would you be willing to do that?
It depends on which player I'm giving up.
Right.
And
let's say Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah, and that's the thing because the Texans are looking for the first as well as a defensive player.
Exactly.
And if you want to give up Marshawn, it depends. I probably wouldn't do it. And let's look at this. And as to that same point, one of the reasons why, and this is going back to the salary cap thing with Mickey Loomis, the reason why they're also, what gets you kind of under the cap as well are draft picks.
Yes.
Because that's a cheap way of accumulating talent. So you're not spending so much money in free agency trying to refill and try to supplement your roster. You're actually doing it cheaply through the draft. So that's why I don't think they're going to get Deshaun Watson, because I think they know ultimately we need that draft capital, because that's what helps us get under the cap. Now, if you give up a defensive player, back to your point, if you give up a defensive player like a Marshawn Lattimore to get Deshaun Watson, you have to be sold that Deshaun Watson is your guy. And for me, if I was in that front office, I believe like he is the guy to do it, I would do it. I don't know if the Saints believe that. So what are your other options if you can't go get a Deshaun Watson? Well, you got to have to draft one. And there's always that hit and miss in those middle rounds of finding a quarterback to be your franchise quarterback. Some can do it. You can have the Russell Wilsons out there. But then you have a lot of bums. You can get your Garrett Gilberts that are not going to do anything, and you end up signing and then it doesn't work out. But yeah, I say if you feel like you can get that franchise quarterback, go ahead and trade the future. Go ahead and do that, because that window only comes around so often. If not, then yes, you're going to have to figure out, all right, in the draft, can we find that quarterback? Can we mold and create one? Because if we don't have that and we lose Jameis, then you're just riding with Taysom.
The only question with Jameis Winston right now, again, is 111 turnovers in his career, and that is the overriding again question mark about him. All you got to do is look at what Tom Brady has done when he goes to Tampa and he brings that team, which was ready-made for a Super Bowl, to a Super Bowl. Now again, you're talking about an elite quarterback. Saints are they willing to put their eggs in Jameis Winston's basket? I say yes. The question is, again, can a guy who's had the bad habits he's had through his career change that in 1 year simply by sitting behind Brees, being in that quarterback room, which he called the Harvard of quarterback rooms? Is that enough for him to be able to say, okay, I'm going to take, like Teddy did when he came here, I'm going to take the completion, because Brees says, take the completion, live to play another day. What are your thoughts there? Because that's the biggest question mark about Jameis.
It is.
It's not talent. Again, it is the turnovers.
Yeah, and we didn't get to see that this year because he didn't play.
That's right.
So that's the other issue. It's like, okay, is he, he's getting the Harvard education. Is it sticking? Is he able to, consume all this information and actually apply it to the football field? We just don't know, because he hasn't been able to.
In real time, when a game's going on, when you got to make these decisions.
We don't know. So, that's the thing. And if you're Jameis, if you're the Saints and you're Jameis, it depends on the team that brings that offers you.
Yes.
If there's, let's say, the Jets or somebody else that isn't quite there yet, why not just go ahead and take that another year?
He said he wants to play with a winner.
He wants to play with the winner. So unless there is a winning franchise that wants him, I don't think he makes that leap to that. I think he will come back and go ahead and compete with Taysom, because he has the talent, the quarterback talent,
no doubt,
the quarterback acumen to beat Taysom Hill out. And I think that's kind of what Sean Payton wants to see. He wants that offseason where he can get both of those guys in there, a full training camp where you're not dealing with Drew Brees and getting his reps. It's here's Taysom versus Jameis. They can go at it. We can see who wins that. And I think in the end, Jameis would beat out Taysom, especially if he's not turning the ball over.
That's right.
If he is taking the checkdowns, if he is operating within Sean Payton's offense. Because certainly the one thing that was lacking from this offense last year with Drew Brees in there is the arm talent.
Yes.
Like Drew Brees, as great as Drew Brees is, there was a lot of times in that playoff game against the Bucs, you're like, man, if he could just get that ball there, and there were a couple of throws where like the quarterback was able to catch up to the receiver and knock it away.
Right.
If he could make, if we had someone like a Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston's arm, then what happens in this offense? And certainly this offense becomes more dynamic. I think it behooves Jameis to come back and compete for that starting job. But again, if a playoff team offers and thinks Jameis is the guy, I mean, it only takes one guy to feel like you can sell on him. Then I think then the Saints are in a little bit of a conundrum at the quarterback position.
I think this is the best place for him. I think he knows that. Again, the question is money worth more than again leading a team who has a chance to win a championship? That'll be the key going forward. Saints may be in more problems with the NFL right now. It was reported over the weekend that the NFL may be coming down hard on the Saints once again because of COVID-19 violations. Kamara was supposedly exposed to a non-employee at Saints camp. Supposedly there's security footage of that. Because of that, and the fact that Kamara refused to wear the contact tracing bracelet, there could be punitive sanctions on the Saints. They've already lost the 7th round pick. They've been fined multiple times, and the question is now, will the NFL come after them for another pick? Ricardo, you and I were talking about this before the show. I brought this up on my radio show. To me, the NFL could go a long way from a public relations standpoint in again, giving the Raiders back their draft pick, give the Saints back the 7th round pick, and fine them heavily. Fine them heavily, and again, take the money, put it in a fund to be able to fund COVID-19 hospitalizations, COVID-19 doctor bills for people that, again, can't afford this going forward. To me, that's much better use for the money than to be able to take draft choices away from teams that ultimately you're going to hurt them down the line even more by taking the draft choices. I get it. But again, to me, the draft choices are the lifeblood of any organization, and I think it's a little punitive to be taking these picks away. What are your thoughts on whether there'll be another pick taken? Saints only have 1st round pick, 2nd round pick, their 4th round pick, and then they get 2 compensatory picks in the 3rd round. So not a lot to choose from if you're the NFL in terms of taking picks away.
Yeah, and certainly I love that idea of using that money, especially with the Saints. If you add Sean Payton's fine to what the Saints organization already been fined, that's $850,000 that could go to COVID, COVID relief, COVID bills.
Right.
That would be a great idea to do that. As I was saying, yes, maybe it is a little harsh to go draft picks. Obviously, the NFL wants to curb any behavior that would go against these COVID protocols, because they've had this hard line on player safety, and obviously they don't want any repercussions legally down the road, so they have to take this hard line. Right. Does it warrant a COVID violation or a second COVID violation? Is it on the same level as Bountygate? Is it on the same level as deflating balls and taping practices? I don't think it is. And certainly when you're taking away draft picks, what are you are kind of damaging, long term what they're doing. So I did pose a question to you. Okay, so what would be the penalty to curb any future stuff for that? Because there could be a lot of teams that could just sneeze at a fine and go, no, we can pay that. Right. It's going to a good cause. Like we're not doing that. So is the NFL using a hard line of draft picks just to go, hey, we're going to take draft picks if you're not following this? And remember, the Saints are repeat offenders. This is going to be the third offense for the Saints. It's not like this is the first time where they went, oh, we had a post-game celebration, we didn't wear masks. Oops, first time we're doing that. Well, this is the third.
Also, they're part of the problem, right? Because, again, they want to video everything and put it out there. How many other teams have been in the same situation, but, again, there's no video of it?
Yeah. See, and I said to the same point, the video's out there, and there has always been this kind of relationship between the Saints and the NFL, where the Saints are very defiant against the NFL just because of what they've done to them ever since Bountygate, suspending Sean Payton for a year, really setting them back. There's a lot of bad blood between the Saints and the NFL. So then it gets into this point like, all right, well, wow, you want to hit them for a third time and really lay the hammer down. What about these other teams that are not, having post-game celebrations? I had a friend the other day that went, well, Tampa Bay didn't have masks on during their Super Bowl celebration. Is the NFL going to find them? The NFL going to come after them? They possibly could. Right. But I always equate it to this. The Saints are right now that bad kid in class. Yes. If you're the teacher's pet, if you get your homework in and you're good, and let's just say you make one misstep, the teacher is going to be a little bit more lenient to you, going, all right, well, I have to punish you, but I get it. It's your first, you may have a bad day, something happened, whatever. Well, the Saints are that bad kid in class. Right. That kid that constantly is in trouble, constantly very defiant. So when they do something on the same level as that good kid, the teacher is not going to have any leeway for them. Right. They're going to be like, listen, you're going to detention. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You're in trouble. That's where the Saints are right now with the NFL. Maybe some of these penalties aren't fair for the Saints, but at the same time, you're the bad kid in the NFL's eyes. So why do you want to put yourself in a position to get in trouble by the NFL? Why why videotape your post-game celebrations? Why, defiantly go, hey, I have a player here that is not going to wear a mask and invite outsiders to the facility, but we haven't done anything internally to do that at least. We're just going, whatever. What is the NFL supposed to do at this point? So it's not. Maybe the NFL could. Maybe the NFL is treating the Saints unfairly, but the Saints are doing any favors to get them out of hot water.
Who would have thought that the Saints would be the Oakland Raiders of this millennium, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because that's pretty much what it is. Modern day Oakland Raiders. All right, we'll take a break. We come back. We'll talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame. Also, we'll get into basketball. We'll talk about the Pelicans. We'll talk about LSU football. We'll also get into a little bit about the recruiting classes, and then we'll touch on college basketball as we're kind of making that move now with March Madness just around the corner. Ricardo LeCompte of WLAE-TV is my guest. I'm Eric Asher. I'm your host. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Ricardo LeCompte of Channel 4 Sports is our guest today. NFL Hall of Fame, a little bit of local flavor. Peyton Manning is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Archie Manning, his dad, will present him, which again is amazing for this town. Also, Alan Faneca, formerly of LSU. John Curtis was born here in New Orleans. His family moved to Texas after when he was in high school, ended up going back to LSU, had a great career there and a great NFL career. Also, again, Charles Woodson, Calvin Johnson were both first ballot Hall of Famers. Drew Pearson gets in. Bill Nunn, John Lynch, Tom Flores, the coach. Of course, it took that Coors Light commercial to kind of put him over the top, right?
Yes.
And two guys that did not make it were Reggie Wayne and Sam Mills. Again, both with local flavor. Reggie Wayne, obviously born and raised here in New Orleans. Sam Mills, again, with the Saints Dome Patrol. First of all, your thoughts on Manning and Faneca getting in?
Well, Manning was like the no-brainer of no-brainers. When he's probably the one of the most like, all right, he's going to make it like absolutely in first ballot outside when Tom Brady and Drew Brees retire. Like that, I mean, that was a no-brainer. And just looking through Peyton Manning's career, you know, even from going from Newman to Tennessee and all the stuff that he did at Tennessee, there was a reason why he was the first round, you know, first overall pick, beating out Ryan Leaf in that draft. Manning had 42 NCAA, SEC, and Tennessee volunteer records by the time he left. And he came back for his senior year. He could have left his junior season like most talent do now when they're like, hey, you're going to be a top pick or, you know, in the draft. Came back for his senior year, get his degree, and all right, I'm going to be the number one overall pick. And then, you know, 1 year, his rookie year, 3-13, 28 interceptions, sets a rookie record for interceptions. And then after that season, which, again, not a Hall of Fame career caliber start to a season, but then they start rolling on. And those Colts teams were so good. It's surprising that they only got one Super Bowl. Obviously, they could have gotten two, but I think a lot of Saints fans are happy he only has one. And then, you know, and then there was you know, it looks like his career is going to end. He has all those neck surgeries, and the Colts end up cutting ties. He gets to be one of the top free agents. He decides to pick Denver, which Denver at the time looks like they're, you know, progressing. They just need a quarterback to put him over the top. He goes and sets a bunch of records, wins a Super Bowl with Denver, 2 Super Bowls. And remember, some of the thing was, well, Peyton Manning put up all the numbers like Drew Brees.
Exactly.
And can he win a championship? Ends up winning 2 in his career. It's a remarkable career, 18 years. that was one of the no-brainers. And Alan Faneca, you know, he's on the ballot 6 times. He gets in on his 6th try. And he's a name, again, one of the, as a guard, one of the anchors on those offensive lines, especially in the NFL. And it's good to see him get in. Yeah. Him and Drew Pearson. And I worked in Texas for a while. So, like, one of the big storylines every year was Drew Pearson going to get into the Hall of Fame? And just year after year, disappointment after disappointment, they would have camera crews set up there. You see it on social media, not get the call, and he's upset. And Drew Pearson was, you know, one of the great wide receivers for the Dallas Cowboys. And it's good to finally see him get in after years of disappointment. So it feels like almost like a redemption. There's a lot of no-brainers for first-time Hall of Famers, but there's been a lot of redemption for guys that get in. Not all the guys that should have got in got in, but it's a good class, a really good class.
It'll be interesting. You and I talked about it before the show, and I wanted to give you a little heads up because I've talked about it a lot on this show and also on my radio show. Sam Mills comes to New Orleans from the USFL, part of that famed Dome Patrol. He made his bones here in New Orleans. He ends up finishing his career in Carolina, a big part of, again, that expansion team, and they end up putting a statue of Mills in front of their stadium. In New Orleans, before Katrina, he was supposed to go into the Superdome Wall of Fame, which no longer exists. Now there is a Saints Ring of Honor. And I've asked the question, and again, I think it's a legitimate question. I think the Saints really need to get it together here. Will he make the Hall of Fame before he makes the Ring of Honor? Will there be a bust of him in Canton before there is a statue of the Dome Patrol in front of the Superdome? And then the other part of this is, again, he wore 51. If he goes into the Hall of Fame, will anyone ever wear 51 again? And then that is timely because Drew Brees' retirement. Right now, Archie Manning's jersey is the only one that's not being utilized on the field. 57, Ricky Jackson's number, 77, Willie Roast's number, and 7, Morton Anderson's number, all in the Hall of Fame are all being utilized by current players. What happens if somebody wants that number 9 down the line here? Saints have some housekeeping to do here in terms of, again, looking back. And I've said it, they're the culture bearers when it comes to professional sports in this town, whether it's basketball or football. And I think it's on them to be able to make sure, again, that they continue to tell the story of the historic significance of players that have played here, from Pistol Pete Maravich all the way to Drew Brees, and yes, even to the Dome Patrol. And it's something they have dropped the ball on really since Tom Benson bought the team.
Yeah, and you make that good point. What are they going to do once? Because no one down the line is going to wear 9. There's no way that the Saints are going to let anybody wear number 9 and they're going to retire.
So how can you let somebody wear 57?
Exactly. So there's going to be some housekeeping. And you would feel like the Saints would retroactively figure all that stuff out once they get Drew Brees in there. And it's almost like a light bulb or a realization will come with them when they go, wait a minute, we're not playing the 9 anymore. Oh, we've got some other guys down the line that shouldn't do it. So, and you talk about they are the culture bearers. And Sean Payton's really embraced that since he's been here. So you would figure that Sean Payton, somebody's going to get into his ear at least and be like, hey, by the way, you've got some other guys down the line that play for this organization that deserve to have their numbers retired along with number 9. I know you were tied to number 9. There's some other guys that, you know, and I feel like the Saints would come back and do that. You would think.
You would hope.
So, yeah, I think down the line, and certainly, you know, voices like you and others in this town that, you know, go, hey, what about these numbers? If those voices get louder and louder, especially after Drew Brees retires, I certainly think the Saints would have to look into doing that.
They have to. Again, and look, it's their responsibility. You know, I mentioned about Pete Maravich's jersey that was once in the Smoothie King Center. Big ceremony. Pete Maravich's wife, his 2 sons there during the ceremony. And then when the renovation to the arena happened, the jersey comes down. The jersey has been retired by the club. The jersey needs to go back up because eventually Chris Paul, David West, and even, again, long time from now, even Anthony Davis will be looked at as a possibility of putting those jerseys in the rafter. And as you and I talked about before the show, hey, Chris Paul, he might play another 2 years. What happens when he goes on his retirement tour? You maybe want to put that number 3 up in the rafters there. It's just they're the culture bearers. They've got to take more of a more prominent role in recognizing the history of sports in this town, especially professional sports.
Yeah, and again, it is the voices of people who have covered these teams for years to constantly bring that up and never let that go to the wayside. So, especially when you're talking about the Chris Paul, when he does his little tour, I call it the Kobe tour. Right. When he does the whole tour around there, when he gets here, those questions are going to be raised again. Right. Those issues and those concerns are going to be like, all right, so how are we going to honor Chris Paul because this is his last game? And then I think once you kind of get momentum, and there's a lot of momentum on that too, because a lot of these conversations go to the wayside. Once, for example, Drew Brees or Chris Paul, when we get to those questions, it's also like, incumbent on everybody else who see that to, hey, what about this? What about this?
True.
Let's figure this out. And I think when we get to those times, I think that's the best time to kind of get those, those concerns and those issues in there and at least get into their ears so they can make those decisions down the road. And hopefully all the things that are supposed to happen in retiring the right numbers and getting those players recognition happens.
Yeah, no doubt. Ricardo LeCompte again with us from Channel 4 Sports. Let's switch to college game. Let's talk football first. LSU with an incredible recruiting class, got to number 3 in most services now. Walker wide receiver Brian Thomas signs this week over Alabama and A&M. Mike Jones, linebacker from Clemson, transfers to LSU in the transfer portal. Tigers look like, again, after all that went wrong in this season, have turned the narrative around, and with this incredible class, which is one of many that Orgeron has had.
Yeah, it is impressive that one bad season doesn't ruin your recruiting class. And it's amazing that you can have a season like the Tigers did, which was a down year, especially coming off a national championship, but in your 2021 class, you signed the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5 top-rated guys in your state. You put the top on your state and then let any of that talent go anywhere else. You're bringing them to Baton Rouge. And certainly, my favorite one out of those 5 is the Neville offensive tackle. Because you need elite guys up front if you're going to win in college football. That's one of the things. You need a quarterback, and you need to be good in the trenches.
That's Will Campbell, right?
Yes, Will Campbell from Neville. And getting a guy like that, who is the highest rated offensive tackle in quite some time in Louisiana. Lyle Collins, I believe, is one of those guys that they've had there. But getting those kind of guys to say, hey, you know what? It's a down year. It's still LSU. We still have a program. It helps. I also think that what Ed Orgeron has done with his coaching staff and making that transition has really kind of ignited and kind of fueled these guys to take another look at LSU and go, man, they're getting younger. They're getting more progressive. And that's one thing I always like about Ed Orgeron. If he knows he's wrong, he's going to fix it right away.
Yes.
He is ready to adapt. And that's a Nick Saban thing, too, as well. Nick Saban's been that guy who's been recruiting is going, you know what, I've won this certain way for so long. Oh, man, offenses now is the way to go, spread and doing this. And we've got to get faster and lighter on defense. And our second, our back 7 needs to be faster. Our linebackers have got to be a little, whatever. Instead of being that coach that just wants to stick to his old ways, it's about adaptability. And Ed Orgeron's certainly doing that with his coaching staff. He's the same way. That's what great coaches, championship-winning coaches do, is go, hey, we go one way and we stick with our way of doing something. But if we need to fix something, we're not going to be we're not going to be hesitant to do it. We're not going to be stubborn in doing it. We're going to certainly change it. He's making those changes as coaching staff, and certainly the players in these recruiting classes are buying into that.
Tulane did the same thing. They made major changes on their coaching staff, both offensive and defensive coordinator. Also, again, added 4 grad transfers and a pretty good class as well. Your thoughts on Tulane?
Yeah, and that's currently what Willie Fritz has been doing these last few years with these recruiting classes, and they're getting better and better. And particularly, as Willie Fritz said last year, it was a younger team last year, but he goes, we're now up front in the offensive and defensive line. We are now D1 ready. There's depth there, we have talent up there, and certainly that's the type of talent needed to contend for a conference championship. Tulane needs to, of course, make that next step. They've gotten these recruiting classes, they now seem to they have their quarterback now. They've got enough talent on there where they can make that next step, and now it's going to be very important that they make that next step either next season or whatever into contending a national championship. Yes. Having winning seasons and going to bowls are great. Now let's make that next step and actually contend and win conference championships.
The overabundance of players in the transfer portal, I think, could be a really good thing for Tulane. Okay, because of, again, a lot of these major schools that are in the Power 5 will not be able to take on all these players. There's some really good players that are going to be looking to be able to get in that may end up in the junior college ranks because there's just not enough open spots. It'll be interesting to see, again, they've already got 4 grad transfers, how aggressive they'll be with, again, even more players that are still waiting in line now to be able to find their university.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with going the grad transfer route. You get a player ready-made
Especially
guy
for
right
Tulane.
there. Exactly, for Tulane. And you can fill a lot of holes. I think you can use that as a supplement. I wouldn't use that as your be-all, end-all of recruiting. But certainly in Tulane's situation where you can fill a lot of holes quickly, a lot of schools, a lot of Power 5 or Group of 5, especially Group of 5, you can get those guys to fill in and right away. But again, you can't have that as your bloodline. You need to recruit.
Especially here in Louisiana, right?
Exactly. When there's so much, and there's abundance of talent.
Yes.
Like when you're seeing guys are signing with Nichols and Southeastern, you're going, man, those guys could play at Tulane.
No doubt.
Those guys could possibly play at LSU. But there's just so much talent here that, hey, why not go ahead and use that? And that's where you've got to make your mark first and then use that transfer portal, which is a great tool to use, but use that as a supplement, not as your blood.
And you see those guys there. You're covering it on Fourth Down Friday, again, the high school. You see these guys, the abundance of talent. And look, when we understand this year and next year, 22 and 23, is going to be a great year for recruiting in Louisiana.
Yeah, there's some really good top prospects, but that's how it is every year in Louisiana, and it's very, all these guys, all these coaches in the state know that, and it's basically, all right, let's get the best talent here, and then let's see if we can make our foot stamp, our stamp across the region, because you can go right next door to Texas and get a bunch of guys.
That's true.
You can go over to Alabama and go to Florida and go dip in there. The South is always going to be rich, and there's always going to be rich of talent, and they can't, like, one school cannot get everybody. Alabama cannot sign everyone. LSU cannot sign everybody.
It's not the Bear Bryant days.
No, it's not. So if you're Tulane, if you're those FCS schools, there's plenty of talent to get there. But again, you have to sell that we've got a program on the rise. Come here, stay home, and you can win.
March Madness is just around the corner. Let's dip our toe in college basketball. First of all, LSU, 12-6, 7-4 in the Southeastern Conference, a team that was thought to be a tournament team. Their RPI is now down to 47th as of yesterday. Your thoughts?
They needed that win against Mississippi State last night. That was a very important win. They had lost 4 of their last 5 going into that game, and there's been some games where you're just watching LSU and you go, man, that 4 is very good with Trendon Wofford, Javonte Smart, Darius Days when he's hitting it. Like those guys are good. They can carry a team. Those are the talent guys that can win you NCAA tournament games. But they need to kind of figure that part out. And I think where they're really hurting is just defensively. And it's they got to be better on that end of the floor. They can certainly score when they want to. It's just if they want to buy in defensively and certainly it's defense and it's rebounding. I think back to that Texas Tech game, which is a great example of what the NCAA tournament game is going to look like. And they had a 7-point lead with a minute to go, and that game goes into overtime because you can't get a defensive stop and you can't get a rebound.
Right.
And it ends up, they end up hitting a shot and tying it, and then you can't even get an inbounds in, and they end up winning. It's those kind of games where it's like, all right, you have the talent to win. It's just you've got to be better in closing out those games. Certainly now they look like a shoo-in, and now they're going to be on the bubble of being an NCAA tournament team. They've got to fix that end of the floor. If they could do that, then we'll see LSU in the tournament, and they certainly have the talent to get to a Sweet 16.
They are talented enough to be able to get to the tournament. It would be really a travesty if they didn't make it.
Yeah.
There'd be a waste of talent. On the other hand, Ron Hunter's doing a great job at Tulane. It's just taking a while. COVID-19 has really thrown a monkey wrench into their season, as it has for UNO. They are 8-7 right now, but 3-7 in the American. I talk to Gary Smith every week, who covers the Tulane for NOLA.com, and he keeps telling me this might not be the year, but next year they're going to be really good. But talk about this year's version of the Greenies.
Yeah, and again, we talked about the transfer portal, and that's how Ron Hunter has to kind of recruit right now. It's not like I can get these 5-star prospects to come in, these 5-star guys, and play right away. It is, all right, we got to get transfers in here. And again, there's an abundance of talent in the transfer portal. You may get some 1 or 2 year guys that are going to come in there, but at least you can kind of, build something and kind of have a core in there where you go, all right, well, this could be a destination. And basketball works a little bit different with football, where you can get a couple of transfers in there, can change around.
Well, you only have 5 guys on the court at a time.
Exactly. So if you get 1 or 2 guys that played at Kansas, that played at North Carolina, they're sitting on a bench that could play.
Right.
You get them to Tulane, they're going to get all the run. You can win. I'm glad they got to win the other night and snapped a long losing streak in the AAC. So they're making steps, and I would agree with Gary where it's not this year. They're certainly not there. But maybe next year and the following year, you can kind of see what Ron Hunter is doing.
Right.
They're going to get there. And so far from what I've seen the first 2 years, they're certainly playing better under him.
Yeah. Coach Celeste having a tough year this year. Again, COVID is an issue as well. They're 4-12 overall, 3-5 in the Southland Conference. I believe you have to be in the top. Is it top 6?
Top 8 to make the conference tournament. So that's what they're shooting for. Your thoughts on the Privateers? Well, they're right there to make the conference tournament. I mean, it's and as you mentioned, COVID this year, a lot of time, especially when you have to go in quarantine or you can't have practice times and you can't do that. When you need that, you need those practices, you need those reps. You can even look at it on the NBA level where, the Pelicans are playing because of the schedule, because of COVID and everything else. You need practice time. And that's why, like, the Pelicans are taking forever to kind of get stuff going.
True.
You're a college team that you already have limited time because you got to go to class and you got to do this. When you don't have practice time because you're quarantining and you've got that, it makes it very difficult to kind of get it going. UNO, I believe, can make it. And, certainly Damian Rosser, their leading scorer, is going to be the guy that's going to lead them. If they can get in the tournament, you never know. But I think if they can get there, we'll see. But again, when you have COVID issues, and especially in this season, it's just very difficult to try to get a rhythm or try to get, the flow of a team going.
Mulligan year almost again when you look at the situation at UNO. I mean, look, it wasn't a couple of years ago. Sless had this program moving in the right direction. Last year they got beset by injuries. This year it's COVID-19. I think he's a great coach.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully again there's some patience at UNO.
Yeah, and I think the situation is at UNO when you're in the Southland, you get a little more leeway, especially when you're going with the circumstances of this year. And I think everybody basically gets a mulligan for this year. Even Will Wade would get a mulligan at LSU. And certainly I think Sless would get that at UNO. Again, things can turn around. You just have to get to the conference tournament. Yep. And if UNO can do that, you never know what happens.
Yep. Shift to the Pelicans. Man, I tell you what, last week this time, I was saying that, again, the only thing that we can count on the Pelicans is they're consistently inconsistent, okay? And then they go on a 4-game winning streak. When you look at the Pels right now, they've won 7 of their last 9. Now, last night, they hit a buzzsaw in Chicago, 129-116. Zach LaVine, Corey White combined for 76 points. But, again, it comes back to defense. When this team on offense, their guards penetrate and get into the paint, they're much better. When they play through Zion or BI, they're much better. When they play defense collectively as a team and individually, they're much better. When they don't, they end up with 44-point quarters like they did in the first quarter and 40-point quarters like they did in the third quarter last night. Now, again, I get it. The Bulls were hot.
Yes.
But you have to be able to, again, as great as Lonzo played and has been playing, Eric Bledsoe, as guards, you've got to do something to be able to put the fire out. And they didn't. The biggest problem right now has been consistently on the defensive end. But they're playing the best basketball they played all season long right now.
Yeah, and it's offensively is how they're doing it. And they're shooting the ball well. And that was, I think, the issue when Lonzo Ball and Eric Bledsoe on the court together. Early on, like, where was your offense coming from? Lonzo was struggling shooting. Eric Bledsoe was struggling shooting. And now Eric Bledsoe has been, shooting lights out. Lonzo Ball has been lighting up, especially from three-point. When you've got that shooting going, it's kind of hard to beat this. And you're also seeing Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. The offense is running through them, but they're not playing iso ball. It's actually working. I think their assists have been up. Like I think BI is averaging like 5 more, like 5 assists per game, more like 5 assists. Zion's up to 6. But they're working within the framework of the offense, and so it's working. And that was a big thing that Sam Van Gundy was saying was that there's a lot of times where we're just not playing through guys. We're just we're dribbling, and we're just playing iso ball. And we're not moving the ball around. So basically, that's the reason why they've had this nice little stretch, because offensively they're doing well. Defensively, they're doing better.
There's no doubt.
But
you can see it.
Yeah, but there's just inconsistency defensively. And it was funny because I was looking at basically the philosophy of what the Pels are doing. So basically, Sam Van Gundy's defensive philosophy is protect the paint, will allow the three-point shooters to do that. It worked last year at that philosophy for a lot of teams. The teams that like protected the paint and had their were one of the top defensive teams in the league. This year it's kind of reversed. So the Pelicans, 4 opponents this year have made 20 plus threes.
Right.
It happened one time last year for the Pelicans. So for whatever reason this year, 3-pointers, everybody's hitting it. It's just a weird kind of year and an anomaly. 9 of the 10 teams, the best defensive teams, are actually better when they've defended the 3 rather than the paint. And I think the Lakers last year were a really good, solid in the paint team because they had Dwight Howard, they had a lot of guys.
Yes.
Well, this year they're one of the top teams in defending the 3, and their personnel has changed.
Right.
So maybe the Pelicans, I know they want to do and protect the paint, but maybe it does serve them better to change philosophies and defend the 3. Just because teams are shooting the 3 better this year, and the numbers are showing that. If you're one of the better teams defending the 3 this year, you're one of the top defensive teams.
Right.
And I think the numbers like 9 of the top 10 defensive teams are high in defending the 3 rather than in defending the paint. So maybe that's where they've got to reassess how they're doing defensively.
It has been an issue. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Again, getting late. Look, it's not like it was at one time where, again, they weren't even defending 3. They're late a lot of times in those rotations to get to the 3. Also, as I mentioned before, we've seen a change in Lonzo Ball. Look, he's hitting now. I don't know if you can hang your hat on him knocking down threes, okay? But one thing that, again, he's been able to do recently is be more aggressive, getting the ball up the floor quicker, getting into the offense quicker, which means, again, you're not ending up with a bad shot at the end of the shot clock. Penetration, getting to the basket, getting into the paint. For a guy 6'6", he's got the skill set to do it. He just hasn't had that physicality, mentality to be able to get it done. That has changed over the last couple of weeks, especially again after all the trade rumors. The question is, will he be that player consistently? We see it from Kyra Lewis. We see it from Bledsoe. We see it even from Nickeil Alexander-Walker, the ability to get into the paint. The Pelicans are better there. They need that out of Lonzo.
No, I agree, and Eric, you hit that point, aggressiveness, and that's what has kind of spurred this hot shooting from him, is that he is penetrating. He's not just settling for shots. It's like, let me get in the paint, and this is a great thing. When you get into the paint, what happens to defenses?
Right.
You got to come in and help, and then what happens? Someone's open, so you pass.
And you're worried about Zion as well.
Exactly, and even with Zion at that point, you know, Zion, we all think of him as a back-to-the-basket kind of guy. Well, his best thing, as Sam Van Gundy said, he's actually a perimeter player that drives.
Yes.
Because when he can drive, like, he's not an inside player. He's not Steven Adams who's camping inside looking for offensive rebounds.
Right.
He's actually starting from the top of the key, or he's gone from the wing and then driving. But it's so much when you're aggressive and you're penetrating, especially with Lonzo, and not settling for those threes, you get the offense kind of moving. And then what happens when you see the basket, when you see the ball go in from the easy layup or whatever, it opens up and it makes it just easier hitting those threes. And that's why his play has gotten better over the last 5-6 games.
Yep. Pelicans right now 11-13 in the midst of a road trip now with teams that are very, very beatable in front of them. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. Ricardo, thanks for coming down today with all the bad weather. Certainly appreciate it.
It's cleared up now.
Yeah, it's been a fun hour. It really has been a fun hour. That's Ricardo LeCompte of Channel 4 Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a lot of ways to be able to check out this program. Again, live every Thursday, 1 p.m. Right here on WLAE-TV. Also, again, live streaming on the YouTube page of WLAE-TV. Also, 6 p.m. tonight on WLAE-TV. 10 p.m. on The Deuce tonight on WLAE-TV 2. 9 o'clock on Friday nights on Pelican Sports Television. 10 o'clock on WLAE. 2 a.m. on Saturday morning on The Deuce, WLAE-TV 2. And then 5 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television. Always at ericasher.com. Always on the WLAE-TV YouTube page. And always on our social media platforms. Eric_Asher on Twitter and Eric Asher on Facebook. So a lot of ways to catch our program. I hope you do. Also, again, you catch me on the radio on 106.1 FM, a Nash Icon. That is 4 to 6 weekdays. You can listen live at ericasher.com. The podcast is available on all the major podcasting platforms. So if you missed any of the program, feel free to check that out at your leisure. All you do is search Inside New Orleans Radio Show with Eric Asher. Special thanks to Ricardo LeCompte for joining us on the program today. Great job. Also to our great underwriters who make this show possible. And also to the staff here at WLAE-TV. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Tommy Fairley, Tommy O'Connor, and my director, William Hill. I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.